scenario.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, chairpersons. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk about a topic which is close to my heart. 20 years back, when I started working in diabetes, so I had a label given to me by my colleagues. They used to call me a soft doctor. So they said, "You're not a science doctor, you're a soft doctor." And I used to wonder what that meant, because they said you spend too much time talking to your patients. Maybe it was because I had very few patients at that time, but it was also because I felt maybe the psychosocial term didn't exist then. There was no science behind it then. But now that I look back, that soft and hard science has come together to a combined science of giving holistic care to a person with diabetes, and today we are going to talk about the psychosocial aspect. Now, immediately the thought comes that we are going to talk about what happens to the patient. So I thought I'll just twist the talk for this eminent audience here, because all of you are experts in your field, all of you are working in diabetes. I did not feel that this is the time now that we don't know that there is diabetes distress or there is a psychosocial burnout. There are so many problems. But most important is we feel ill-equipped on what do we do about it. We understand, but we are not sure how to go about it. So today's psychosocial aspect, the Indian perspective, is totally about us, every one of us in the hall. I would like to acknowledge Dr. Kalra and his team and this paper. Anyone who develops an interest at the end of the talk or is already interested in the psychosocial aspect should read this paper. It's very comprehensive, very thorough, and the only Indian guidelines that exist today. So this is how a patient comes to us. The patient has a psychology, a biology, and a social content. But we all know that entire time, the entire file, the entire reporting, our history, our recall taking, every tool that we have developed in our clinic is focused on only that blue circle, and that is the biology, which probably makes us a doctor, but does not make us a healer, does not give us the outcomes that we desire. But is this just theory? Are we just thinking it changes the outcomes? So psychology, if you're just looking at it and you say, oh no, it's too tough, it's too vague, it's too soft. But if the person does not have an attitude or a belief in what is being given, you know that. You've seen it every time a patient comes to you and they're saying the medicine is going to harm me. Allopathic medicine, my kidney is going to fail. So he comes with a belief set and your medicine is not adhered to. The person comes with a personality which is very aggressive. And then no matter what you give, ultimately you're getting tough time with getting the sugars controlled. Patient does not have a coping skill. Patient is emotionally broken down. Patient has a past trauma. I have a patient whose father died in dialysis with a very bad time of 25 years of diabetes. That boy, when he has developed diabetes, boy means he's 30 years old, but he is always in a state of panic. Every time with his blood sugar levels, he will check his kidney function. It is fixed that my father died of a kidney disease, it's going to happen to me too. So this whole psycho aspect cannot be ignored. And then we keep wondering, why isn't my patient doing well? Same goes with the social content. You give person a great insulin to take, the person's hand trembles, there's no electricity, cannot see in the night, there's no one at night to help them. There's no one. I have senior citizen patients who you tell them to take a morning snack and they say, no, it's not possible because the social system in the home is not such that they can take a waking up snack. So education level. Education and awareness are two different things, formal education versus awareness level. So psycho and social aspect, can we really ignore? In diabetes, can we just look at the biology? And if yes or no, that is what we are going to look at. So the reality check. Let's all introspect and look at our own patients. These are the actual data available that the WHO 5 Well-being Index, Indian patients had one of the lowest well-being in the world. And their perception of burden of social and personal distress because of diabetes was the highest, amongst the highest, which is pretty sad. Considering a population where the incidence of diabetes, the prevalence of diabetes is so high, now we are going higher and higher. What we were supposed to achieve in 2030, the numbers, we achieved them in 2020, which is not a great thing. But if they're going to be on top of it, they're going to be sad people, then I think it's something that we as doctors have to really think about and step in. It's time. So the dictum is that the psychosocial factors are important for giving an adherence to treatment. That is one aspect. The other aspect is that a good care, the good medical care, good control, good diet, nutrition, time, everything is itself very instrumental in giving you a good psychosocial environment. So it's a two-way traffic. So we do our job when it comes to medical care, giving them good nutrition, good exercise, everything else, medicines, not getting into hypoglycemias, reducing the irritability. These are some things I'm sure all of us today focus upon. But the reverse is also true. So what is happening to the patient is very important. One of the days, one of my patients came and he threw the file, he shouted at everyone outside, he says, my sugars are high, you guys don't know how to treat a patient, and you're the worst doctor on earth, this, that. He shouted all over the place, and my staff panicked, and they said, ma'am, he's creating a hangama outside. I said, okay, just calm him down and send him first, break the line and send him in. He sat down, I got up, I placed a hand on his shoulder. He was a 50-year-old gentleman. I just placed a hand on his shoulder and I asked him, how are you? What happened? The man sobbed like a baby. He started crying. He said, ma'am, my wife died 2 months back. And I always used to come to your clinic with her. She was my caregiver. She was the one who looked after my meals, my medication. I didn't even know what I take. And she's no more. Now I can't control my diabetes. I'm a wreck. I don't want to come here because this place reminds me of you. So unless we look, I know it's very soft, I know it's not that easy, but if we do not have a system in place to look into these things, how are we ever going to be able to help that person? Hence, it's a circle, depression due to diabetes or diabetes due to depression, anxiety due to diabetes or diabetes due to anxiety, and we have to look at that. This is what I have been saying. We are all well equipped, I'm sure. Attending these conferences, going back home, putting in the best practices in town, we are all well equipped with nutrition, exercise, medication, and monitoring. We have wonderful tools. We have educators, we have nurses, we have systems in place, we have apps. What do we do beyond that? And that is the question. In India, other than all these things which are going into a person's head everywhere in the world, it's not just diabetes they have to live with, it's 100 other things that we know about. But in addition, India has some special issues. These are the 3 issues which were isolated in the various studies when they were compared with the American studies, the UK guidelines and the Canadian guidelines, that these were the issues which were not covered in all the international psychosocial guidelines. And these are the economic factor. We have such a wide variety. In your clinic, you would have a person who can't afford his fare to your clinic, and you would have a person who can afford everything on earth. So you are dealing with both kinds of socioeconomic status. Cultural and religious factors are very prominent. We do fastings, we do feastings, we believe this is right, we believe that is wrong, there's so many belief systems. You can't challenge them. You can't tell a person this is wrong. Are we equipped to handle it? That is the question. We have to get done what we want to get done, but how do we get it done? Are we equipped? And the traditional and alternative medicine, with no direct comments on that, but every person we know tries it in some way or the other. And if they don't try it, they are at least given advice by 100 people. So all the way from methi to everything on the earth, to babas and everything. I deal with type 1 children. I run an organization called Udaan with 700 underprivileged type 1 child. Every child before they have come to us has tried some baba, some holy water, some ruhani ilaj, something, because they want hope. But we have to be able to capable of dealing with it. So just meet a patient. This is Mr. Perfect D, I call him. We think he's great. He walks into your clinic, you know, in a car, swinging his key. I just found this photograph and I found it very cute. So he's doing everything. He's well educated. He knows how to carb count. He has a CGMS. He knows everything on earth. He's very confident. Comes to you with an HbA1c, discusses with you whatever is latest happening in diabetes, and you think he's great. He's probably one of your champion patients. But did we ever find a way to know? Would you be able to guess that he's in a diabetes burnout? It is an actual entity. People burn out with chronic disease. And this whole thing, imagine 24/7 when they are balancing this. The point is, are we as doctors equipped to detect or have a tool to find out whether the person is going through a diabetes burnout or that he has often thoughts of quitting? I know such people who finally think, you know, it's just getting too much, let me not live anymore. And they come back, that's great, but do we as doctors have a tool to go for it? Yes. So coming back to the science of it. So what the guidelines, the Indian guidelines say, specifically for India, is to provide care in our clinics as all of us, which is absolutely not easy, and hence it's very important that we talk about it, is number one, improve our own awareness and skills. We as the healthcare community has to improve our own awareness and skills. Second, psychological assessment and management is something we have to learn. We have to find tools. We have to find space. We have to find a team. How is it going to happen with one consulting? Because right now the sugars are important, the heart is important, the kidney is important. And when do we look at the psychosocial aspect and how? So is there a guideline? Similarly, how do you do a social assessment and management? So is there an Indian guideline? Yes, I had flashed it in the beginning, and that's very interesting, and do go through it. It exists. In fact, it was in 1674, that is nearly 400 years ago, 300 years ago, for the first time it was claimed that sorrow causes diabetes. So until then it was an insulin, nutrition, exercise imbalance, and we've come a long way, but yet we have not come far enough to incorporate it as a part and parcel of our treatment to our patient. So the most difficult part for us is ourselves. As doctors, how do we improve the awareness skills of healthcare professionals? That is our own. So what the guidelines say is that at least informal or preferably formal training in psychological interventions and coping and counseling should be with every doctor. You may not be the one delivering it, mind. So I can totally see your faces thinking, oh God, I can't do this. Obviously you can't. You're not going to sit, hold the patient's hand and counsel the patient. But if you can pick it up and there is a system in place and you can refer to the patient at the right time, you can make a big difference not only in the patient's quality of life but also the diabetes control, because as we saw that these are interrelated. The second guideline is that we have to be very well aware of the biopsychosocial model of managing diabetes. Most of the time this is not focused upon, and unless and until we understand there is a strong connection, and there's so much of evidence, there's so much of science that today shows the outcomes are very different where the psychosocial support is there versus it is not there. So we have to become aware of the biopsychosocial model in the care of diabetes management. And then if we can receive training in special courses which are teaching and counseling techniques. Believe me, they are wonderful courses. The SWOT analysis people know about, the care technique, problem solving technique. There are hundreds of techniques. If we do, I learned them because I deal with children with type 1 diabetes. I have to be there for them. But they helped me in taking care of my own teenager children as they grew up, because these were things I didn't know. And then I realized how important they are. So again, I'm saying to all these three, they sound a bit tough, but if we are not aware, if we don't have a team, if we don't have a place where we can refer to, I don't see how we can take care of that aspect of all our patients. Second aspect, which is our onus, is again creating awareness. Awareness is again at three levels: community awareness, patient-centered approach, and relationship-centered approach. These are three things which are recommended in the guidelines that we do. So creating awareness in the community, we have to create tools. These are, for example, I mean, this photo is just half there, but that's me sitting on the floor with the coaches and the mothers of my type 1 children, where we are teaching them in small groups at their level, in their language, on the floor where they are comfortable. So this is what you can call an education toolkit, which is tailor-made to the kind of people you're talking to. There would be a group where it would be very sophisticated, very high-end. It would be something which is very basic. But if you can't do it, find somebody to do it. How is it possible not to have a method of screening psycho-socio-emotional well-being of your patient? There is a tool such as Johari window. Very interesting. I was not aware of it. I found out when I was working for this team that it's a kind of a self-assessment questionnaire. A person goes through it and it builds your self-esteem. You start feeling good about yourself and your own life about diabetes. And if there is an issue, if there's a lacunae, your doctor or your counselor or your educator can address it. But that helps you to take care of yourself better, adherence better, dose adjustment better, monitoring better, diet better. So everything ultimately comes back to your medical care as a base of your own emotional psychosocial care. Again, public awareness is another topic which is our duty, that we make people aware that there can be a mental, emotional, psychosocial problem. We have to first get aware, we have to be very conscious. Maybe we can put up posters with some points where they feel that if they're feeling low, if they're feeling burned out, if they today feel I want to chuck away all my diabetes supplies, I don't want to take my tablet, I don't want to do any kind of diet control, I don't want to monitor my sugar, it's okay, it happens. So there has to be a system in place where such tools are created, where we can create awareness amongst doctors, ourselves, then our patients, and then provide them a place to go when it is needed. So it's easier said than done. Once we have created awareness at our level, then there is psychological assessment and psychological management. Now these are things which you have to know, and hence it's very important that we understand that this is science. It looks soft, but it is a definite science. And we all must have heard of the DAWN study, Diabetes Attitudes and Wishes and Needs, which was the first time which we had DAWN 1 and DAWN 2, and it gave us a very, very clear outcomes that the psychological support in undersourced and inadequate in both adults and children, resulting in poor quality of life and well-being. Lots of tools are available. There are tools which are questionnaires, there are WHO-5, PAID, other diabetes distress tools. If just forms that your nutritionist can fill, your educator can fill, and somebody can screen them, and that can be picked up. So assessment can be done through various tools. You can tailor make them in your own language. They're available in most Indian languages, and that can be part of your risk assessment scores that we do. We can do a psychosocial assessment in our own clinics. Management is a tough job. Are we equipped for it? I totally realize that I am not equipped for it. I only realize that I have made myself aware that this exists. I probably am able to detect something, and I'm able to refer. That is the level of my equipment to be able to handle it, because it would need a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a counselor on your team. If possible, wonderful. All the best centers in the world do have that as part of the team. So we really need a proper system. Again and again I'm saying, if you are treating a patient of diabetes and the patient has depression, and if I'm missing it, let that not happen. If the patient has anxiety issues and you're missing it, let that not. So let's have a system, a toolkit in place. There are a lot of them available, wonderful ones which you can translate, keep in your clinic, hand over to educator, train them, and then the therapy. You don't have to give the therapy yourself, but if you're not aware, you will not be able to offer it to the patient. So CBT is a well-established therapy. There's something called the motivational therapy, counseling therapy, problem-solving approaches, family therapy, there's yoga therapy, dance therapy, painting therapy, music therapy, n number of therapies. Let me just tell you an anecdote here. I had a patient who had Parkinson's and diabetes. He was 70 years old, hands trembling. He was a tabla player. And he went into depression, his sugars went haywire, he wouldn't eat at night, he would land in hypoglycemia. And then he said, I can't play anymore. He used to use the harmonium and the tabla, and he says, I can't do it. So just spending 5 minutes with him helped us. This was discovered by my nutritionist who said, Kaka, why are you so upset? Why are you having tears in your eyes? Then he said, I can't have music, that's why I'm sad. Then we called his son and got him a, what do you call it? That keyboard. The keyboard that doesn't require pressure. So his fingers, it was soft to him, and got him an iPad. They had money, they had everything, but they could not pinpoint that what is happening. And that just changed his life. He started playing music on that, started listening to music with all the technology available, and he got better controlled. I actually have his whole case recorded. So a very small thing made a difference. Psychiatric assessment is a very, very big aspect. Mental illness and diabetes, we all know depression and diabetes, anxiety and diabetes is a clinical entity. Let us not miss it. Let us be able to at least detect, suspect, send to the right person, diagnose, and be able to treat. This training is important. All of us need to get trained to be able to detect early and send to the right person. This is one of my failure stories that I'm sharing. This is an article, this is my own publication which was in the mHealth journal, and passive sensing of depression using a mobile app and PHQ-9. I have so many patients, I felt I'm giving them good care because I hug them, I talk to them, and I laugh with them, go for a picnic with them, and I thought everyone's fine. Then with this passive sensing app, it's called WISA, they wanted to do a study whether passively can we sense and detect depression in a person, and now there's very such tools. So this mobile that they had an app, and using their night time, call time, waking time as the sensing, ambience, light, it was high rates of depression were detected, and this was collaborated with PHQ-9 scale. I hope many of you must be aware of a PHQ-9 scale. This is a set of 20 questions, minimum number of questions that's scored, and that gives you an index of depression. Out of the 50 people screened, we had almost 40% people in my group who had at least some sort of depression, and 2 were actually clinical depression who went to a psychiatrist. And this was a big jolt for me. And that is when I learned, went back, put a system in place, and I hope we are better. So what seems to be and what actually happens can be very different. Tools are important, science is important, assessment is important, going to the right person for the treatment is important. Our job is to be able to detect and get the right tools and put them in place. That is the stress that I want to make again and again. And lastly is social assessment. We cannot have one shoe fits all. What is happening in their family, whether they come from a village or a town, whether there's gender discrimination in their family, which we see all the time. I'm sure you see that in your clinics. Customs and religions make such a big difference. People going on pilgrimages, all kinds of things happen. This they can't eat, this they can't do, this they can't inject. So all those things have to be known to us, urban-rural setting, community reaction, and affordability. There's no way you can treat without knowing these things. So social management has 94 guidelines. So I'm not going to talk about them, I haven't even put them here. Just 3 important thoughts, and this is the last slide of this, is that the physicians are recommended to assess the socioeconomic class of the patient. Please do. Before prescribing, it's not about an expensive or a non-expensive drug. It is also the way they think. It is also the trends in their culture, in their society. Then we have to be sensitive to their income and education profile. Only then will there be adherence. If you are giving somebody a basal bolus therapy, see to it that there are tools in place, there is a system in place, that they have accepted that it will be done, or else it will go out of the window in a week's time and just won't be possible. And a culturally competent aspect has to be thought about. I'm sure we do it in a small way. We all do that. We try to talk to a patient, try to make a patient comfortable. But if there was a system by which we could assess and pinpoint and get a feedback and take the patient forward, that would complement our therapy in a big way. So to end this, it sounds tough. Yes, it is very tough. The purpose of this entire talk is to use guidelines, create our own tools. I know everything doesn't fit for everyone, and a team. There's no way we can do it alone. But let us today go sensitized, thinking that with the medical care, psychosocial care is just as important for the well-being and better medical outcomes of diabetes in our patients. So these are my 4 lovely girls on top of Daulatabad Fort. All were 2 to 3 years old when they had type 1 diabetes. They are best of friends, and our 700 children trek every day. I hope their psychosocial well-being is good, but during this study, I realized that I must be lacking somewhere. So I'm going to go back home and really put more stringent tools in place to assess the psychosocial care in my own patients. And I hope you do too. Thank you so much.